Newcastle. And we're back with Alex Ayre, documentary filmmaker at Tyneside Cinema. So I'd like to ask you a bit more about your career now, Alex. At the age of 15, you started with Northern Stars Academy at Tyneside Cinema. Was that the start of your passion for filmmaking?
Absolutely. I think I think I tried out acting a little bit in school. I'm from Northumberland, and I tried out drama a little bit. And then my uncle had introduced me to the Tyneside Cinema, and as we talked about earlier, like that was my first interaction with world cinema, with films from countries that weren't the UK or America. And from there, I encountered the Northern Stars Academy, and I applied for it and was very fortunate enough to get a place. And I did 2 years on the Northern Stars Academy. I was taught to sound record and to camera operate, and then eventually I was taught to direct. And that's where I found my passion. I found my passion particularly in documentary filmmaking.
Now, what themes interest you in documentaries?
That's a great question. I think I think when I went into it, I would look for a subject each time that would kind of challenge me in some way. I made several films around martial arts, and I kind of started several short films around martial arts, short documentaries, and I kind of started with those to train myself better in both interviewing and camera operating and stuff like that, because you're going out in a really small crew, you're going out with a couple of people. They weren't big budget films, they were just passion projects of mine. But from then on, I kind of tapped into themes that I really liked. I loved the themes of fame in kind of local settings, particularly around the northeast where I'd kind of grown up. I loved kind of locality and fame, like the way that you can be famous in a very small setting, and I love nostalgia in people. I know you can sometimes try and get away from it, but I loved the sense of nostalgia in people, and I loved certainly in some of those martial arts films, I loved tapping into youth and masculinity in young men especially, and yeah, very much youth and the passage of time and age, I think.
Right. Now, what are the qualities that make a good film director?
I think I can only really speak to documentary. My passion very much lies in documentary directing, and I think in order to be a great director of documentary, you need to be able to establish access to your subjects. You need to gain the trust of your subjects, whether that's a person, whether that's a place, whether it's an area or a location. You need to establish trust, because if you can't establish trust with a subject or with a person, then you're never going to get a really genuine artifact from it. If you're making a documentary, they're never going to let you into their lives as such. And obviously with the Dream Palace, it's especially challenging as there's so many different contributors in it, so it was particularly challenging.
And which directors inspire and motivate you, and why?
I love the works in terms of British directors. I love the works of Ken Loach and Mike Leigh. I love social realist directors, people who very much elevated working class voices in their films. And much more recent years, I love Shane Meadows' films. I've loved all his work.
But with directing, how do you copy, or do you copy? That's always a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. It's an interesting question.
So how do you put in your own creativity in that?
Yeah, you look at. There's technical skills as a filmmaker that I'll be learning throughout my whole life, and I'd never see myself as being perfect at anything. I'm always learning something else. But aside from the kind of technicalities of being a filmmaker and specifically directing for film, I try and better myself as a storyteller with everything I make. So I don't just take influence from directors in film. You can take influence from a song, you can take influence from a book, anywhere that somebody can tell a story. I think you look at techniques, how you can tell a story, and that can be applied to documentary, absolutely.
Right. Well, I just wanted to mention Ken Loach, because he said that in order to make films, you have to understand the world. Otherwise, what stories do you tell? And you have to read history, engage in the ideas that have shaped the way we are. So in your documentaries, you like that reality. So is that what you are following?
Absolutely. I said there, like, the thing that I was drawn most to when I first started making documentaries was that immediate world around me, was that these characters in documentaries that were famous, but in a very small local setting in the northeast of England. So going directly off Ken Loach's statement there, that's me engaging with the world, the immediate world around me, and being able to tell what can be seen as quite a big story, but in a very, very small setting, and it doesn't have to be on a huge scale.
Now, Ken Loach never succumbed to the call of Hollywood. So, if the opportunity arose, would you head to Hollywood?
I'm not sure what that. I'm not sure. It's an it's all dependent on project. I think.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming today to the studio, and from all the team, we wish you luck. Success in your career, and hopefully we will see you holding that Oscar one day.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Well, that was really interesting, and from an older people's point of view, I found that really great that we had a couple of brilliant directors, Ken Loach and Ridley Scott, name-checked there, both in their 80s, both making brilliant films still. Anyway, time for music. My next track is from 1961. It's one of the so-called death ditties that was around at the time. It's Johnny Layton singing Johnny Remembered.